One night changed everything in a way I never saw coming, and even now when I replay it in my head it feels unreal how quickly a stable, predictable life can fracture when one sentence is spoken out loud. Because I am Brian, 48 years old, a forensic accountant by profession and a man who always believed consistency, loyalty, and providing were the foundations of love, and my wife Olivia, 32, radiant with her chestnut waves, striking green eyes, and a warmth that made everyone around her feel seen, had been my partner, my home, my certainty, or at least I thought she was until the evening she calmly told me she wanted more than our marriage could give her. And what still stings the most is that she didn't shout or cry or hesitate. She simply said she needed to explore who she was beyond us, as if our years together were a comfortable room she'd outgrown. And I remember planning that dinner at Cedar and Vine in downtown Phoenix like it was a last attempt to anchor us to what we had been, reserving the best table overlooking the desert skyline. Choosing a bottle of wine I knew she loved, even buying her the gold necklace she had admired for months. $1,500 spent on something that now feels like a symbol of my denial. Because I wanted the night to feel special, familiar, safe, but from the moment she sat across from me I sensed the distance. The way her attention drifted, the way her eyes searched the room instead of settling on me, and when she finally spoke, voice low and careful, telling me she wanted an open marriage, the world tilted under my feet. Because all I heard was that the woman I loved wanted to invite other men into a space I thought was sacred, and no matter how gently she wrapped it in words about self-discovery and honesty. It felt like betrayal dressed up as personal growth, and I tried to understand. I really did, asking questions, searching her face for doubt, but what I found instead was resolve, and that resolve terrified me because it meant she'd already decided before I ever sat down at that table. And when I stood up and walked out into the warm Phoenix night, leaving her behind with unfinished wine and unanswered questions, I wasn't being dramatic. I was escaping the realization that my marriage had already cracked, and that night blurred into coffee at a quiet diner, hours alone in my car, a restless drive with no destination. Until exhaustion took over and morning arrived without clarity, only confirmation, because her missed calls and messages didn't erase what she'd said, and as I pushed myself on the treadmill at Peak Performance Gym, sweat burning away sleep but not anger, it became clear that I could not live in a marriage where I was expected to wait patiently while my wife explored intimacy elsewhere. And when I finally returned home and faced her, the conversation we had was calm on the surface but devastating underneath, because she spoke about freedom and validation while I spoke about boundaries and respect. And somewhere between those words we realized we were no longer speaking the same language. And when I told her she would need to move out if she wanted this open arrangement, I saw shock flash across her face, as if she truly believed I would bend, would accept, would stay silent, but I couldn't, and watching her pack her bags and walk out the door felt like witnessing the end of a life I had carefully built. And the days that followed were hollow, the house echoing with absence, nights spent staring at the ceiling, replaying every memory, every compromise, every sign I might have missed, until I made a decision to move forward instead of drowning. Returning to cycling at Pine Ridge trails where the physical burn offered relief from emotional weight. And that's where I met Sarah, a nurse with an easy laugh and tired eyes that told stories of her own heartbreak, and what started as shared miles turned into conversations, then dinners, then moments that felt effortless in a way my marriage hadn't for a long time. Because Sarah didn't ask me to be less or wait or sacrifice my dignity, she simply met me where I was. And when she kissed me for the first time outside a quiet bar after a long ride, it wasn't about replacing Olivia. It was about realizing that connection could exist without conditions. And as weeks turned into months, kayaking trips and sunset conversations filled spaces that had once been occupied by doubt. Yet Olivia lingered in my thoughts like an unresolved chord, not because I wanted her back, but because endings rarely feel complete. And when she finally showed up unannounced one afternoon, standing in the doorway with regret written across her face, telling me she wanted to come home, I understood something crucial had shifted. Because instead of relief I felt distance. And when she asked if there was someone else, and I answered honestly, the pain in her eyes mirrored the pain she'd once asked me to endure. And in that moment I knew reconciliation wasn't about love anymore, it was about consequences. And choosing myself meant letting go, and filing for divorce wasn't an act of bitterness but of acceptance. And as that chapter closed, new ones opened quietly but steadily, my career advanced, my sense of control returned. And my relationship with Sarah deepened without force or fear, until one ordinary afternoon, surrounded by unpacked boxes in a new home, she told me she was pregnant, and the joy that followed felt earned, not stolen, a reminder that sometimes loss clears the way for growth. And standing there holding her, I realized my story wasn't about punishment or revenge or proving a point. It was about boundaries, self-respect, and the understanding that love cannot survive when one person asks the other to disappear for their comfort. And as I looked toward a future that included marriage, fatherhood, and a peace I hadn't known before, I finally understood that the night Olivia asked for more didn't ruin my life, it redirected it. And sometimes the hardest endings are simply the beginning of something truer.